Every delivery app runs on the same quiet promise. An address goes in, food comes out, and somewhere in between, a stranger on a scooter or in a beat-up sedan makes sure the two things meet. Nobody thinks much about the address itself. It's just a string of numbers and a street name, trusted without question, the way you trust a map to be telling you the truth. Tonight's story is about a delivery driver named Andre Solis, an app called SwiftBite, and one order that kept routing to an address that had been demolished 4 years earlier. If you've ever had a piece of technology insist on something you know for a fact isn't true, you already understand the specific unease this story runs on. Keep that feeling in mind. It's going to matter. Andre was 26, driving for SwiftBite full-time for a little over 2 years, ever since a community college program he'd been grinding through quietly fell apart when the funding did. He drove nights because the tips were better and the traffic was lighter, looping through the same 20-block radius of the city so many times he could have driven it with his eyes closed, which, some nights, exhausted at 2 a.m., he felt like he nearly was. He knew which apartment buildings had broken buzzers, which restaurants ran 15 minutes behind no matter what the app promised, which streets flooded the second it rained. He was good at the job, in the unglamorous way anyone gets good at repetition, not because it was interesting, but because his body had learned it so thoroughly his mind barely had to be present for most of it. He'd built, over 2 years, a private mental map of the neighborhood that had nothing to do with street names and everything to do with feel. Which blocks felt fine at midnight, and which ones made him lock his doors without quite deciding to. Which regulars left their porch lights on for him, and which ones made him wait on a dark stoop for 5 minutes while they searched for exact change. He delivered to first dates, to hospital waiting rooms, to a man once who'd answered the door in a full wedding dress and tipped 40% without a word of explanation. Andre had stopped being surprised by most things this job could throw at him. That, too, would turn out not to be entirely true. The order came in on a Thursday night in November, a modest one, a burger combo and a milkshake from a diner called Lonnie's that Andre picked up from constantly, one of maybe a dozen restaurants that made up the bulk of his weekly runs. The delivery address was 1147 Larkin Street, a number and a street Andre didn't immediately place, which wasn't unusual in itself. The app served a wide enough radius that he couldn't have every address memorized. What was unusual came a few minutes later, once he'd picked up the order and pulled up the delivery route, and his GPS quietly informed him that 1147 Larkin Street did not currently exist as a deliverable location, because the lot at that address was, according to the map's own satellite imagery, an empty gravel lot behind a chain-link fence. Andre sat in his car outside Lonnie's for a moment, milkshake sweating condensation onto the passenger seat, staring at his phone. He delivered to strange addresses before: a parking garage, a bus stop where someone was apparently just waiting to intercept their food, an office building's loading dock at midnight for a security guard working alone. Weird addresses were part of the job, but an address that the app itself was showing him via satellite view as an empty lot was a new one. He called the customer service number listed for the order, mostly out of habit, expecting the usual runaround. A hold message, an automated system, maybe eventually a human who'd tell him to just use his best judgment. What he got instead was a strange, hollow silence on the line for almost 30 seconds before the call dropped entirely. No error message, no busy signal, just a clean disconnection, as though the call had simply ceased to exist partway through. He tried canceling the order through the app instead. The cancel button, when he pressed it, produced a small spinning wheel that spun for nearly a full minute before the app returned an error. This order cannot be canceled at this time. No explanation, no alternative offered. Just the flat refusal, sitting on his screen next to a milkshake that was going to be warm soup within the hour if he didn't do something with it. Andre, being 26 and tired, and not particularly inclined toward philosophical standoffs with a food delivery app at 11 at night, did the only thing that felt like it would actually resolve anything. He drove to 1147 Larkin Street to see for himself. The address, when he found it, was exactly what the satellite image had shown: an empty gravel lot, fenced with chain link, a faded real estate sign zip-tied to the fence advertising a redevelopment project that, based on the sign's sun-bleached lettering, had apparently stalled out years ago. There was no building. There hadn't been one, from the look of things, in a very long time. The street around the lot was quiet, in the particular way city blocks get quiet once something's been missing from them long enough. A gap in the row of buildings that neighbors had clearly stopped noticing, the way a missing tooth stops feeling strange to the tongue after enough time. A street light nearby buzzed and flickered, casting the gravel in intermittent orange light. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked twice and went quiet. Andre found himself listening harder than the situation seemed to call for. The specific hyper-attentiveness of a person standing somewhere they can't quite explain to themselves. Andre stood at the fence for a minute, burger bag in hand, feeling the specific foolishness of a grown man delivering food to an empty lot, and took a photo of the address marker still bolted to a chunk of curb. 1147. Faded but legible, mostly so he'd have proof, in case anyone at SwiftBite ever asked him what happened to this order. He was about to leave, chalk the whole thing up to a glitch, and eat the burger himself on the drive home, when his phone buzzed with a notification. The app had marked the order as delivered. Andre stared at the notification for a long moment. He hadn't tapped anything. He hadn't set the bag down, hadn't approached any door, hadn't done a single one of the actions that would normally trigger a delivery confirmation. He was still standing at the fence, bag in hand, food undelivered by any definition he understood. And yet the app, with total confidence, was telling him, and presumably the customer, that the delivery was complete. He didn't sleep well that night. He told himself it was a system error, the kind of thing that happens when an app's back end gets confused about GPS coordinates, and that the sensible thing to do was report it to SwiftBite's driver support line in the morning and move on with his life. He did report it. The support representative he eventually reached, after a lengthy hold, was polite, unhelpful, and entirely unbothered, the customer service equivalent of a shrug. She told him the order showed as successfully completed on their end, thanked him for his diligence, and closed the ticket before Andre could ask any of the follow-up questions he'd been saving up. He assumed that was the end of it. It was not. The same order, burger combo, milkshake, Lonnie's Diner, 1147 Larkin Street, came through again the following Thursday. Same time, almost to the minute. Andre noticed the address before he'd even finished loading the bag into his car and felt something colder than confusion settle into his stomach, the specific dread of a pattern announcing itself. He drove there again anyway, mostly because refusing the order outright felt riskier to his driver rating than simply repeating the strange, pointless errand from the week before. The lot was the same as before: empty, gravel, chain-link fence, faded sign. He stood at the fence again, and this time, instead of leaving right away, he waited, curious despite himself, to see what would happen. Nothing happened for almost 5 minutes. Then his phone buzzed. Delivered. Andre mentioned it the following night to a coworker named Foster, an older driver in his 50s, who'd been doing food delivery even before the apps existed, back when it meant working directly for a single restaurant with a bike and a paper ticket. Foster was the kind of driver everyone on the app's loose, informal network of regulars knew and trusted, not because he was especially friendly, but because he was reliably honest in a gig full of people exaggerating their earnings and complaining about tips. Andre found Foster at the usual spot, a gas station parking lot where a handful of night drivers tended to cluster between orders, trading complaints about the app's payout algorithm and comparing notes on which customers were worth the drive. Andre almost didn't bring it up at all, half worried it would sound like exactly the kind of tired, over-caffeinated nonsense a driver might invent at 2 a.m. He brought it up anyway, mostly because the alternative was carrying it alone, and he was tired of that.
Foster's reaction was not what Andre expected. He didn't laugh it off. He went quiet, the particular quiet of someone recalculating what they thought they already knew about a conversation.
Larkin Street, Foster said. The 1100 block? Yeah, 1147 specifically. You know it? Foster was quiet again before answering. There used to be an apartment building there. Came down, 4 years ago now? Maybe 5. Fire, I think, or close to one. I don't remember all the details. I remember there were people who didn't get out. Andre felt the cold settle deeper. How many people? I don't know exactly. A few. It wasn't huge news outside the neighborhood. Small building, not a lot of units. But I remember it because I used to deliver there a fair amount before it happened. Regular customers. Guy on the 3rd floor who always tipped in cash and always ordered the same thing on Thursdays. Andre didn't say anything right away. Foster continued, his voice lower now, the tone of someone deciding how much more to share. Burger and a shake, Foster said, from Lonnie's. Every Thursday like clockwork. I want to say his name was Desmond, but it's been a long time, and I could be getting that wrong. Nice guy, always tipped well. 3rd floor, unit... I don't remember the unit number, but it was on the Larkin side of the building, I remember that much, because I used to have to buzz twice to get let in. Neither of them said what both of them were clearly thinking. Andre asked, eventually, whether Foster had ever gotten an order routed to that address after the building came down. Foster shook his head. Not me, but I've heard other drivers mention it over the years. Not often. Every once in a while, somebody brings it up. Usually the same way you're bringing it up now. Confused, a little rattled, looking for someone to tell them it's just a glitch. Is it just a glitch? Foster considered the question with more seriousness than Andre expected. I think the app's just doing what apps do, pulling from some old database entry that never got properly wiped when the building came down. Coordinates linked to an address linked to a customer profile that's technically still active somewhere in the system. That's probably all it is. But I also think, Foster said, slower now, that if a man tipped well and ordered the same thing every single Thursday for years, and then didn't get the chance to finish however many Thursdays he had left, I don't know. I think some habits don't know they're supposed to stop. I think, glitch or not, somebody's still hungry on Thursday nights, and the app's just the part of this that happens to still be listening. Andre didn't know what to do with that, and told Foster as much. Foster's advice was simple, and delivered with the flat practicality of a man who'd been doing this job long enough to have made peace with things he couldn't explain. Take the order if it comes up. Drive out there. Leave the bag at the fence instead of just standing there next time, if it makes you feel better. Don't overthink it, and don't skip it either. I've got a feeling skipping it would bother you a lot more than delivering it does. Some orders, you just fill them and let it go. Andre took that advice, more or less. The order has come through 6 more times since that November, always on a Thursday, always the same burger combo and milkshake from Lonnie's, always to an empty gravel lot at 1147 Larkin Street that has since been sold, resold, and is currently, according to a newer sign zip-tied to the same fence, slated for a townhouse development that has not yet broken ground. Andre still drives it out there every time. He leaves the bag resting against the base of the fence now, near where the old address marker used to be bolted to the curb before someone eventually removed it. He doesn't wait to watch what happens to it. He gets back in his car, drives away, and by the time he's a block down the road, his phone buzzes with the same notification it always does. He has stopped reporting it to SwiftBite's support line. There didn't seem to be a point. He has, instead, developed something closer to a personal ritual around it. He always picks up an extra napkin for the bag, a small, unnecessary gesture he can't fully explain even to himself, and he always says, quietly, to no one, "Here you go, man," before he gets back in the car. He doesn't know if that helps anything.
He doesn't know, honestly, what there would even be to help. But it feels, to him, like the smallest possible kindness he can offer someone whose Thursday dinner order apparently outlived him. And he has decided that offering it costs him nothing, while refusing it might cost more than he wants to find out.
Foster retired from driving about a year after that conversation, tired knees finally winning out over the job, and the two of them don't cross paths much anymore. But Andre thinks about what Foster said more often than he'd admit to most people, that some habits don't know they're supposed to stop, that the app is just the part of this that happens to still be listening. He's found, over time, that he doesn't need to fully believe it in order to keep acting on it. It costs him 20 extra minutes on a Thursday night, and the price of a napkin. He has decided that's a cheap enough insurance policy against a question he'd rather not spend too much time asking directly. He has never told his other co-workers about it, the way Foster clearly hadn't gone around advertising it either. It's the kind of story that only makes sense to pass along to someone who's already halfway to believing it, the way Foster had recognized something in Andre's face before Andre had even finished describing the address. If you ever find yourself delivering something to an address that logic tells you shouldn't exist, you might want to consider that not every order is really for the person who placed it. Some habits, it turns out, are stronger than the buildings that used to hold them, and some deliveries get made long after anyone's left to open the door. This has been a Whisper Dark original. If this one made you look twice at your delivery app's map, you know what to do. Subscribe, and we'll see you in the dark next time.